Welcome to Francis Reads the Bible. I'm moving on to Genesis chapter 39. And Genesis 39 is about the trials of Joseph, if you ask me. So, Joseph was now in the land of Egypt. He'd been sold to Potiphar, the captain of the palace guard, the king's palace guard. And the Lord was with Joseph and made him successful. He lived in the house of his Egyptian master. Joseph did not make himself successful. That's what I'm picking from this. God made him successful and God was with him. So in 3, his Egyptian master saw that the Lord was with Joseph and he made him successful in everything he did and had made him successful in everything he did. So Potiphar was pleased with him and made him his personal servant. So he put him in charge of his house and everything he owned. From then on, because of Joseph, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian and everything that he had in his house and in his fields. Oh, wow. So many things to learn from these few verses. 1, God made Joseph successful, even in his trial. Joseph was not a king, Joseph was not with his parents, Joseph was a slave. But even in that place, God made him successful. He didn't make himself successful, it wasn't by his power. God made him successful. And because God was with him and he was prospering, anyone and everyone could see that God was. Potiphar was not a Christian, he was not a Jew, he was not a Hebrew. He didn't even know the God of the Hebrews. He didn't know El. But he knew there was something. Aside from that, remember that these Egyptians are magicians, they worship other gods, they're very strong when it comes to all these things. I'm sure you must have noticed there's a god with this guy. Maybe he even done some divination, but he could see that Joseph was different. Everything he touched prospered. Another thing to learn from this is that even people who are not Christians, when God prospers you, when God is with you, when you're working with God, they know, they can see it, they can tell the fruits, by your fruits, by your character and all that, people can tell if which God you worship, that God is with you or not. Remember, Joseph was not the he was not the richest man in the world. He was just a servant, a slave. Even in that position, God was with him. And this man could see that there's something special about this boy. Another thing I'm learning from these few verses is that God can bless you because of someone. The house of Potiphar was blessed extra because of Joseph. Because of Joseph, God blessed the household. That's why sometimes in my culture, you can say, oh, that person is bad luck. More journey, so as in like when this person comes in, everything goes bad, and then I start asking you, who came into your life when all these things start happening. Some people now tell whoever they dated or are dating or married to, you are bad luck, you are this, you are that. So yeah, people have spirits and it affects things. Joseph had the spirit of God, and the spirit of God blessed everyone around him. He was a blessing. Even though he was a slave, a servant, he was a blessing to the household he was in, and God blessed everyone there because of him. So if that person is moving with a demonic spirit, that demonic spirit can curse and affect everyone in that environment because of that, or that person they are indwelling in, that person they are attacking, that person that is working with them. So the spirits people move with is very important if you are going to liaise or have any interactions with them, business wise, friendship wise, marriage wise, anything wise. Just see the prosperity that Potiphar's household experienced because of Joseph. We always think that if God is with someone, then the person should be like the richest person in the world. And this Joseph was a slave, a servant. But even in that position, God was with him and blessed everyone around him. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Then Potiphar turned over everything he had to the care of Joseph and did not concern himself with anything except the food he ate. See, Joseph was such a person of character. The son that his father could trust, and send him to go find out what his brothers were doing. And he would come back and report everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly. He would not hide it. Oh, what this person did was not good. This, that. Such a person of noble character, and he rose that way and he showed everywhere he went. So again, Joseph was well built and good looking. I can just imagine what he looked like. And after a while, his master's wife began to desire Joseph and asked him to go to bed with her. He refused and said to her, "Look, my master does not have to concern himself with anything in the house because I am here. He has put me in charge of everything he has. I have as much authority in this house as he has, and he has not kept anything back from me except you. How then could I do such an immoral thing and sin against God?" Although she asked Joseph day after day, he would not go to bed with her. Ah, and Joseph did not have a choice. Okay, yeah, he could have told his master, but who would the master believe really? I'm not even sure. Because he was a servant, even though he was favored. He was a servant. He couldn't say, okay, this job, I don't want this job anymore. I resign. He couldn't resign. He was a slave. And see, Joseph didn't decide not to sleep with this woman because of, it wasn't even because of his master, but he said, how can I do this such an immoral thing and sin against God? That's why I'm telling you that no man, it just gets me so, like, people, you can't change people. Someone should not want to do something because of, not because of you, but because of God. If it was because of his master, he would have followed sins because he would have looked at it like, I have benefits here, benefits there. But this was such a person of high moral fiber and character. And what was important to him was his relationship with God. You remember he was close with his father, and Jacob had a relationship with God, and he must have taught him all this. So his relationship with God was very important to him, and he wasn't going to do it because of God and because he respected his master, and it was the right thing to do by not doing anything with the wife. So if someone, I've heard people say, "Oh, I'm going to change because of you." No, change because of God. Do it because it's the right thing to do before God, because I think when people start doing things because of you, they would feel, you know, but if it's for the right reason, which to Joseph was his relationship with God, and he wanted to do right by God, you won't falter. He did not. So one day, when Joseph went into the house to do his work, none of the house servants was there. Ah, unfortunate. She caught him by, I'm sure she must have sent them all out to go do something elsewhere. She set a trap. She caught him by his robe and said, "Come to bed with me." Another Bible version says, "Lay with me." But he escaped and ran outside, leaving his robe in her hand. When she saw that he had left his robe and had run out of the house, she called to her house servants and said, "Look at this. This Hebrew that my husband brought to the house is insulting us. He came into my room and tried to rape me, but I screamed as loud as I could. When he heard me scream, he ran outside, leaving his robe beside me. First to cry, there's a saying in Nigerian Pidgin English. Anyways, so this lady, I'm sure she set this trap intentionally by sending all the house servants out so she could get Joseph, try to force herself on him. But luckily for Joseph, or should I say, luckily, or anyhow you look at it, luckily or unluckily for him, he escaped. He just, I'm sure she held on to his clothes, and he just removed his clothes and ran out because it was a robe. It wasn't something he had to pull from his head. So he ran out naked. And then, because she was afraid that this boy would go and tell somebody or tell her husband or something, she decided to be the first person, you know, to tell the story. And by telling the story, she told a lie. And that's the funny thing. Well, rather, that's the truth. When people do something, two people are involved in something, the person who is at fault sometimes will be the one who will go around shouting, see what the other person did, blackening the other person's name, painting the other person black because they don't want people to know the truth. And then, funny, sadly, people will believe the person who cried wolf first. Oh, this person is so wicked. We knew it. We knew it. She's wicked. He's wicked. But you see, Joseph wasn't at fault. It was his master's wife. But then she was the first person to cry out. And most times when someone cries out first, that's the person everyone believes without knowing the full story. That's what happened there. It actually happened to me once. So yeah, I think that it's life because they don't want people to find out what they did. They will now blacken your image, tell a lie, tell a false story, and sadly, people always believe. And then Joseph didn't even bother defending himself. It's so sad how just reminds me of a part of this Me Too movement. I'm not saying that it was that everybody were liars, but some were questionable. But that's the thing when one person comes out and jumps on social media, hey, and everybody just rushes and believes without questioning, without asking, is it true? Is it not true? Let's hear from the other person. People just one-sided story. Everybody just believes that's what happened, and that's what happened to Joseph. So she kept his robe with her until Joseph's master came home. Then she told him the story. That Hebrew slave that you brought here came into my room and insulted me. But when I screamed, he ran outside, leaving his robe beside me. Joseph's master was furious and had Joseph arrested and put in prison where the king's prisoners were kept, and there he stayed. Okay, so going by this, I don't think his master would have believed him if he told his master that the wife had been trying to sleep with him. But who knows? But going from what happened now, he didn't even bother to ask Joseph, is it true? Is it not true? Well, the lady was his wife. So yeah, he believed his wife over the slave, which probably why Joseph just kept quiet and never said anything. If Joseph was in today's world, he would have been cancelled on social media by so many people. They would have tagged him rapist, so many things, and done an outpouring of love on Potiphar's wife. Well, but God was with Joseph and blessed him so that the jailer was pleased with him. He put Joseph in charge of all the other prisoners and made him responsible for everything that was done in the prison. The jailer did not have to look after anything for which Joseph was responsible because the Lord was with Joseph and made him succeed in everything he did. One thing I'm picking from here is that God was with Joseph did not mean Joseph did not go and was not going to go through the trials he went through. He was a slave, but God was with him. He was falsely accused, but still God was with him. He was put in prison. Now he's now a slave and a prisoner, an imprisoned slave, but still God was with him even in that situation. It didn't mean he wasn't going to go through trials because God was with him. He did. But God was with Joseph even in his trials. I think this speaks to me on so many levels, yeah. We just feel because we're Christians, there won't be trials. There'll be trials. But just like Joseph, God will be with us in those trials. And God helped give him the strength, to prosper, even in that place of trial. He was in prison, but he still found favor with the jailer. And he didn't that he found favor didn't mean he was going to leave prison. He wasn't going to be in prison anymore. He was still in that prison. He was still going through that trial, but God gave him the strength to go through that trial by being with him in it and giving him favor before the jailer, you know. So yeah, trials will come, but in all things, God will be with us if we ask. So people will be reading like, God was with Joseph and blessed him, and he's still a slave, and now he's in prison. If God was with him and blessed him, shouldn't he be prosperous? Shouldn't he own a private jet? Shouldn't he be a king? Shouldn't he be this? Shouldn't he be that? No, this was Joseph's season, his wilderness period, if I can call it that. This was his season to face trials, to that will forge him and give him the strength to get to the place where God needed him to get to. Because many people in this situation will be like, nah, this God, I'm not worshiping anymore. From being a slave, now an imprisoned slave. I'm not worshiping this God anymore. That's what some of us might have done or would do or would have done if we were Joseph. Because he suffered. Anyways, these are my thoughts as always, as imperfect as they are, and I'm no pastor. This is Francis Reads the Bible. God bless you. Goodbye. See you next time.